Dato' Nur Halim Yunus, thank you very much for joining us on Hello Malaysia. Well, you've been the CEO of the Malaysian Technology Development Corporation, in short MTDC, for a very long time, 25 years now. We're going to pick your brains bit by bit and get a lot of information from you as to moving forward and also grooming technopreneurs. That's what we want to talk about today. It's a very interesting area, and when you look at pioneering technology development, this is something that started some years ago, and we're now beginning to see it gain traction in Malaysia. Now, before we go into all that, would you walk us through MTDC once again? For those of us who are lost in all the acronyms we have in Malaysia, let's just walk through MTDC and look at its services first.
Okay, MTDC was formed in 1992, and it was formed originally, in fact today, it was formed as a venture capital company, meaning that in 1992 we look at the Korean Technology Development Corporation as a model. And it was thought at that point in time that to assist commercialization of research and development of public universities, we need a funder. And this funder will come in the form of venture capital company. So that's the history behind it. It was formed to assist universities to commercialize research. We found out actually quite quickly that venture capital does not exist in a vacuum. Because for you to have a venture capital activity, operations, you need to have companies to be funded. Yeah, and these companies need to be to reach a certain critical mass, so to speak, so to enable you to choose, right? So and then they have to be listed or be acquired for you to have an exit. So I guess 25 years ago, this was a challenge, quite a big challenge actually. So we then sort of tweaked it a little bit. So we went into mezzanine financing as well. That's how we have, even until today, I still sit on the board of Globetronics Berhad, which is one of our earliest investment of people coming out of Intel and setting up their assembly companies. Of course, now Globetronics does not do mere assembly anymore. Yeah. So this is how we started. We started with the intention of actually assisting universities to commercialize their research via venture capital investment. But there were challenges because there were not that many technologies being commercialized, and of course, being a venture capital, there has to be an exit within a certain time frame, and normally venture capital fund have 10 years plus 1 or 2 years. So in 1997, the government gave us another role, beside being a venture capital company, to basically manage what we call now this CRDF, Commercialization of Research and Development Fund, which was then offered as a grant, matching grant. So I think that would be our, maybe as a version 2 of MTDC, where we have venture capital as well as grant, because we see that a lot of companies needs a lot of high risks funding, which are not offered by the market, and you can't offer them via venture capital too, because venture capital is a very costly source of fund.
And by that time, by 1997, I guess the ethos and philosophy of how things work had to change then.
Well, it has developed, as I said, when we were formed as a venture capital company, because then that was the way people think when we talk about early stage ventures. And you look at Silicon Valley in 1992, they're using venture capital. So you look at the Korean model, they're using venture capital, but venture capital needs other partners for it to work well. And then we need to generate the income for us to continue, right? So
I think the stress and the motivator was generating the income at that point when it was scarce where information was concerned, and people didn't know much at that time.
Yes. Yeah. But we already tweaked our business model when I said just now that we changed and included mezzanine financing for us, because mezzanine financing is basically investing in the company which are about 2 to 3 years before listing.
Right.
So that generates the cash flows. Yeah. So then, 1997, we started the CRDF fund. This primarily for us to provide fund on high risk commercialization projects. Yeah. And these funds are given as a matching fund, as a matching grant, so to speak. So that sort of make it very attractive for companies to commercialize. If not, if you were to take it in the form of a loan, it's not doable. If you take it in the form of venture capital, it takes a very long time before it can be, can reach an exit, or the cost of the venture capital fund is very high.
Right. Now, MTDC's role, had to keep evolving from time to time.
Yes.
Now, from the time it started till now, the role has slowly tweaked, and it has been changed. Now when you look at MTDC's role, it's totally different from when it first started. Now, can you walk us through the role of MTDC at this point?
Now, in terms of its core, it's still the same.
The core is still the same.
We are assisting companies to climb up the innovation value chain.
That's the main objective.
Via transfer technology from preferably public universities and research institute. Yeah, that has not changed very much. We are still doing that as part of our core activities. But as I mentioned just now, as you grow, as you evolve, you find that there are things that are lacking in the ecosystem. For example, when we talk about venture capital, even in the US, they have grants system. So it goes in hand with, if you were to read the book by Mazzucato, which is a very famous book nowadays, The Entrepreneurial State. It's argued that a lot of, for example, Apple, for example, the technologies were funded by government by grants before it was packaged by Apple. So what I'm saying is that as we develop, then we know that the ecosystem is not complete, so we introduce new components. That's why while we started as a venture capital company, and we still remain a risk fund company, all right, we have added in other things to make it, shall we say, complete. That's why our tagline is the complete equation, because now we have actually added venture capital. We have other hybrid form of funding. We have what we call the promissory notes, convertible promissory notes, CPN. We offer it for our business startup fund. We have our redeemable convertible preference shares, which we are offering for our business growth fund. We have our technology development centers at several universities, where companies can be located inside the university's campuses. And in the 10th plan or 11th plan, we have strengthened our other advisories and value-added services. So while our core remains the same, we have added other components to actually make it a complete, shall we say, offering to our entrepreneurs.
Now, when you talk about entrepreneurs, you talk about all these people who need to gain experience.
Yes.
You need to groom these people, grooming a new generation of technopreneurs. That's a lot of work has been done in that area with regards to MTDC. Now, I'm sure you've got lots of stories to share with us, but before that, can you give us an insight as to what it means to groom technopreneurs? It sounds very sexy when you talk about it, but it entails a lot of hard work.
Now, before that, first I would like to say that when we talk about we are working with entrepreneurs and on technology, I try to refrain from sort of focusing on the cutting edge. We do cutting edge investment. We do cutting edge funding. But the needs of technology development in this country is not only for cutting edge technology. A lot of SMEs need technology and they don't need cutting edge. So we work across the technology development continuum. We work with individual entrepreneurs, we work with young entrepreneurs, we work with established SMEs, for them to inject innovation into their companies. So if you were to ask me, in terms of how do you work with this? It depends. It depends on the industry they are in. Some industries are more established and more open to innovation and transfer and commercialization. For example, you can talk to people in the electronics industry. They are day in, day out playing with this. In fact, we have found that companies who don't even have patents, because the patents keep changing every day. But if you were to go to other subsectors, for example, food. So food will be depending on where you are. If you are talking about fast-moving consumer good, their concern is different. If they're talking about food additive, for example, that will be more higher tech and more specific.
Now, with the success stories that MTDC has seen, what can you share with us with regards to a company who's found it hard to move with the times, but who's successful today?
Well, I think when I joined in 1993, we funded the first Malaysian animal vaccine company. I'm not sure whether it's the first regional, but definitely the first Malaysian. And I have mentioned earlier on that this kind of product, the moment you enter the market, you are competing with the MNCs. We are a very open market in Malaysia, right? So in 1993, when we commercialized these technologies from the veterinary research institutes, as well as Universiti Pertanian, at that point in time, Universiti Pertanian Malaysia, and formed the first Malaysian animal vaccine company. What was the challenge? One of the challenges is that, okay, I'm going to form this biotech company. Do we have the authority to actually give them the certification? There was none. So these are the things that we need to look at the ecosystem. I want to form a company now, but there is no GMP for vaccine. I have a GMP for food. I have GMP for drugs. I don't have a GMP standard for animal vaccine in 1993. I'm talking about the challenge. Second thing is that there were easily 30 to 40 MNCs selling vaccines to the poultry industry in Malaysia at that point in time. All of them MNCs. All of them world class. So if I want to do this commercialization of research, I have to be world class. If I'm not world class, I can't compete. So that's a very big challenge. Even though the poultry industry in Malaysia is very big, but there are a lot of players.
There are a lot of players. The challenge was big.
Yes.
How did you circumvent this?
So this is where actually I think commercialization is not only about cutting edge technology. You can have the best technology product, but no technology sells by itself. I guess if you were to develop a cancer vaccine, a cancer drug today, probably that can sell by itself. Probably because but other technologies, it doesn't sell by itself. There is this famous wisdom quotes by someone, I can't remember the name now. It says that if you were to develop the best mousetrap in the world, even if you are on the top of a mountain, people will beat a path to your door. It doesn't work that way. So this is where sometimes the mismatch between the producer of the technology, the researchers, who always focus on the technology itself, and he believes or she believes that because the technology is so good, people will buy. It doesn't work that way. So that's why you need the entrepreneur, and this is the most important thing that we will always tell all our stakeholders, that for you to commercialize the technology, you need to collaborate between those who invented it and the people that will bring it to market, because these two need to collaborate, because the products do not sell by itself. So in this case of our animal vaccine, the vaccine is world class. We even had a heat-resistant vaccine for village chicken. Can you imagine that?
So
because
that was a value added.
It's a value add.
Yeah.
But the second thing which is also important, and I think if not equally important or more important, is that technology is a prerequisite. You need to have technology to sell. But to be able to sell successfully, you need to have other things. This is where marketing, product design, branding, networks, and all the whole range of things that come into play.
So fast forward, what happened to the company? How successful is it?
Now the company is very successful. They are exporting to many countries in this region, and as I said, even if they were to go to Indonesia like what they're doing now, they are still competing with 40 MNCs. You have to have that value, that people were willing to pay money for a Malaysian product as opposed to buying from Kuala Lumpur or Malaysia or those kind of, those kind of things. So technology must be good, and you must have that marketing and business development.
So that's vaccines. That's something very, very niche, but yet it's a huge industry. But making vaccines very niche. If you come down a little bit more and look at companies that were doing ordinary things that are successful today, what can you tell us?
Well, we have a project which we gave the CRDF grant in 2000 or 2001. This company is called Malaysian Phosphate Additive. Basically, Mr. Lim Liwan, his name, he was an engineer with Shell Singapore. So he came back and he said, look, I think Malaysia has a lot of oil palm, but we are importing the phosphate. If people stop the phosphate supply, our palm will die, because everybody needs phosphate. You and I need phosphates, the palms need phosphate. So he started a phosphate mill in Lumut in about 2000, 2001. And we funded him with CRDF, and then we follow through. This is where our complete equation thing is, with venture capital in 2005, 6, 7, and 8. Now we are in the process of building a 2.2 billion integrated plant in Miri, Samalaju, It's going to have 9 plants, and it's huge. From 2000, when we funded him, a small company in Lumut, now we are in the midst of building a 2.2 billion plant, and the product is phosphate. I mean, it's not cutting edge. This is where I keep saying that for us, we need to look across the continuum. We can't be focusing on everything that is cutting edge. A vaccine is very cutting edge, right? But this is something that, while it is not cutting edge, we need it. All palm need it. Phosphate is needed for everything in food, for us as well. And it has done very well.
Right.
Yeah. So it shows that for technology development for us, a developing country, we need to address the needs across the continuum, because everybody needs to move up. The B40 requirement, the SMEs that service the B40, they might not need cutting edge. What they need is an injection of technology which will increase efficiency and productivity and enable them to compete in the market.
Right. This is a very interesting time, because when there's a need for technology, people start to open their eyes, keep their ears peeled for information at all times. Now, as a person who's been here for the longest time, what do we not know, the everyday people, what do we not know about technology development in Malaysia? Because you speak to people, you go to social gatherings, you speak to people from different walks of life all the time. What do we not know or we take for granted with regards to technology?
I think still there is a challenge for me. SMEs by nature, they are not in a position to do research and development. No SMEs.
So R&D is still a struggle to us.
Not just us, a lot of countries in this world, because that's the nature of SME, because theirs is more operation, right? Now, which is the most logical thing then to do? What is the most logical thing then? If you are an SME, the most logical thing for you to do when you cannot do R&D yourself is to find those who can do it. And in our case, the government has funded the universities to do a lot of research. Yeah. A lot of research, and those knowledge are residing in these universities. And this is where, if you were to ask me, this is the thing that we need to do. We need
but still we hear talk about not enough research papers coming out of universities. Now, this was some talk somewhere last year. It was out in the papers. And
yeah. I disagree with that. I mean,
you disagree with that?
I disagree. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people are saying that we're not doing commercialization enough. Now, I can tell you that if you were to read the US papers, right, the congressional reports, the US is commercializing about 12% of their patents a year. Federal patents, the one that are funded by federal government like NASA, Department of Energy and all that, not the state patents. So what I'm trying to say here is that we are focusing on one end of the technology development continuum, which is commercialization. But if you want to look at the whole continuum, there are a lot of other activities where the SMEs and the industry in general can participate. You can do collaborative research, you can do contract research, you can send your staff for training, you can take staff from universities according to the courses that you want. There's a range of things that needs to be done. The challenge here is that's because we are focusing on one point in the spectrum. Therefore, we miss the forest for the trees. This is my this is my argument.
Right.
Yeah. What we need to do now, and I have been saying this for years, we shouldn't be focusing purely on the commercialization of products developed by universities, because that's very niche and it needs a certain type of entrepreneurs. What we need to do now is actually to get the SMEs engaged with the universities.
Now, a lot of people are just starting off. A lot of young people who are driven are starting out as technopreneurs, entrepreneurs, and there are also people who are about our vintage who want to start out, working for a company a long time. I want to start my own thing. What would be your message to them with regards to getting into embracing technology, about technopreneurship, about entrepreneurship?
Well, I mean, if you look at the data, and most people, I mean, at least not now, but in the past few years, a lot of entrepreneurs started when they are mature, mature entrepreneurs, late 30s, 40s, even retirees. So in our case in Malaysia, there are a lot of opportunities. In fact, to be frank, and I think this has been mentioned many times, it is not the issue of lack of money in Malaysia. While people still talk about there's not enough money, but there are a lot of funds. There are a lot of government funds. There are also private.
I mean, last year's budget, there was a huge sum of money allocated to what we're just talking about.
Yeah, but the issue here is, I think the thing is that a lot of, sometimes people have this misconception that, look, I have an idea, therefore I'm going to be funded.
Right.
Now, this is where, we had, talked earlier about the academy, because when we want to set up a business, it has to be validated. It has to be tested, your idea, whether it's workable or not. And this is where sometimes when, people think that because I thought of this, I think it's the best in the world, therefore I'm going to be funded. So this is something that, a mismatch of expectation. While the funds are available, funds are there meant to support, from the analyst point of view, those that we, that can be successful. So that's a slide of I think if we can get this to work together, I think that there will be much more improved situation. Yeah.
Now, by hearing you talk and by interviewing you in the last 26 minutes, I can see one thing that comes out of you, and that's passion.
For sure.
Yeah, passion. 25 years being with MTDC, and you're still passionate about this. You're not like, okay, I'm here for an interview, I'm going to do it and get out. You're very passionate about the way you talk about things. Now, how did you keep that fire burning for 25 years, and what brings that fire about?
Oh, I think it is first and foremost. I think I joined MTDC from the plantation industry, and that was a conscious decision. I mean, plantation industry is very big, huge. I was with Guthrie before, and the career path is not bad. When I joined MTDC, it was a startup. 10 people.
It was scary times.
Yeah, 10. Yeah. It was a startup. It could have folded. So I think when we join this kind of organization, especially dealing with technology, it's more about your passion. Of course, when I first joined, it's more on the technology side, because being a sort of a techie myself, so we always look at technology cutting edge. But over time, you can see that technology by itself, as I mentioned just now, is not everything. It's just a means. So you start to talk about how do we groom entrepreneurship, technopreneurship. And these are very challenging things, and very interesting too, because I look at technologies all the time, different technologies, from the simplest one to the most complicated one. I have now a technology which we are funding, producing a virus-like particle vaccine, VLP vaccine. Most people wouldn't know what that.
Vaccines get you excited, I see.
But virus-like particle, you don't know.
You don't know,
right? So, but then I also do mundane things like phosphate.
Right.
I do project like involving a few 100,000. I do project billions. I do project in Malaysia. We do projects together with our companies, bringing them to Indonesia, to Middle East. So we do a lot of things to support our entrepreneurs. So it is always exciting. I could be today talking to you about an academy. Tomorrow I can talk to you about how do we develop our companies. Now I have a small company which have received contract with the Dubai government. Can you imagine that? A small company which funded under Symbiosis, receiving a contract by the Dubai government, who actually opened the tender worldwide. These are the things that makes the job very interesting.
Now, with successes like this, and when you help with the various projects within MTDC, there's a $1 billion ringgit project, and there's a $1 billion project, and then there's the 200,000 ringgit project.
Yeah.
Now, where is the passion the same for you in the small or big one?
For us, it's the same. Because at the end of the day, it's not the dollar value that's important. It is important, of course. If you have a 2 billion ringgit project, the impact, for example, the one that we have in Sarawak is going to impact. They are going to pay, their GNI contribution will be 13.5 billion. Their tax will be in the hundreds of millions. So it's important. But if I can also, we have also projects, small projects, which actually, small amount, but have an impact as well. Because at the end of the day, as I mentioned, it's all about affecting across the continuum. You can't focus on one end of the continuum and then you leave the other end. It has to be across the continuum, and technology has to serve the needs of the high tech and the low tech, the rich, the middle class, and the B40. So it cuts across.
So technology cuts across, and we must always not look at it in various classes. We need to look at all classes and see what you can do within all these various classes within society to be able to gain something out of it.
Sure. For us, our name is technology development. So we are assisting entrepreneurs across the technology development continuum.
With that, Dato', thank you very much, and we'd like to thank MTDC for all its contributions towards Malaysia. Thank you.